The Buckley interview was a very good one. You had two guys who knew what they were talking about. I wish at least one of them was maybe a little bit more positive towards Buckley. But
And
that
his show.
what?
And his interview show, which there's a little bit of derision there, which I
Yeah,
think is unfair.
yeah. I found that a bit odd too. The Kurt Vonnegut show was quite good. The Orson Welles show.
That's I would prefer that in a sense even to the Kubrick one, just because Orson Welles was such a seen as an outsider that it seems like they're able to talk about him more fluidly. The Ingmar Bergman one kind of grated on me because they group in all his films as equally great,
Yeah.
whereas with Orson Welles, they can get into the tragedy of the Magnificent Ambersons. They can get into how much he was able to do with so little, and refreshingly, they also agree with you when it comes to The Third Man that he was at the forefront of why that film is a great film.
Yeah, and then the Dickens show was good, solid, and then the Susan Neiman philosophy show on evil.
There's a great drinking game if there's any drinkers out there too. Count how many times she mentions the NRA.
Yeah,
and be plastered by the end of the interview.
It was bizarre because I mean she was personally nice enough, but it's one of those things that you have no idea how obsessive someone can be. She was obsessed with the NRA as the con guy was with Monkey Con, but it's over and over, and she, oh, the guy who's the political head of the NRA is worse than Ted Bundy. What?
She's so stupid too. I mean, you just have to say it. You're going on about how there's smaller evils and that they trickle up into larger evils, and she just doesn't understand. It has to be obvious. It has to be politicized with everything. And she may very well be a nice woman. I don't know how she was off camera, but she was rude in some
Right.
of the ways that she was answering your questions, and because she was completely dismissive.
She comes off that way, and she wasn't that way personally, but she's one of these people who she is sort of in a sense, like I said, Dennett was. She's laser-like. She has her viewpoint, and nothing is going to deter that. And she comes off as very small-minded. The next one
positive I'll say about her points is I looked her up online. She kind of looks like Kathy Baker, which is refreshing considering Kathy Baker is a very good and underrated actress. That's all.
And I'd love to get Kathy Baker. One of these days I'd love to get Kathy Baker to interview because Picket Fences was one of the best shows of the '90s for the first 2 or 3 seasons. The Ray Harryhausen show had the guy from the Godzilla show. It was another good, fun show to do. Philip Goldberg was an interesting interview. Chris Wyan, the Dream Bank guy. This is an example of a one-on-one interview that got better as it went on. The first 10 or 15 minutes, I had to really, cajole him and open him up. He wasn't used to speaking. But once I got him going on the dreams, it becomes really a fascinating interview. And his Dream Bank is a very interesting website to talk about. He talks about these worlds that he creates in his mind and has had in his dreams. It's one of those interviews that I think is really a terrific interview. If you watch the first 5 or 10 minutes, you're gonna miss what comes later because you might turn it off and go, oh, this isn't that good. Then I did Swinburne on Evil. He was pretty good. I thought it was pretty a good one. The Sheldon Solomon one on Death, the social psychologist. Yes. This guy was outstanding.
Yes, absolutely outstanding. The beginning where he goes off on kind of like a soliloquy is a terrific opening. It's one of the best openings. This is one of those ones you could argue is the best of the one-on-one interviews.
Yeah.
That could challenge the Jung Spawn one. Then there's the Hart Crane one, where this became less about the person that Hart Crane was because there's only so much out there and more about the poetry, but some of the comments you kind of have to lead them and guide them by the hand, like little children, because they don't seem to be able to come up with any kind of independent thoughts without your guidance.
Right. The Piero Scaruffi one, as you mentioned, has so far, as we're taping this now in May of 2016, by far the most popular one. because he apparently that website of his is so popular. What is amazing though is people always complain about Cosmoetica being, oh, it's not bells and whistles. His site is far, more primitive looking than mine, and he's got a lot of interesting stuff there. But as a critic, he's very
Well,
hit.
it's mostly just a bunch of lists, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um, he's a much more interesting person than his website
right.
would seem.
Yeah, right. I would agree. Then I did the alternate history, greatness
I
to
have a
that.
question of
Yeah.
this one. There's a fellow on YouTube, and I think his name is Cody, and he does a show called the Alternate History Hub. When you send out these emails towards the E-list, you'll sometimes give a summary of what shows are coming up, and I believe his name was on there. So what happened with that? Because that show,
He just said he didn't want to do it. I don't know.
that
I don't.
show that show on YouTube is actually, the videos that he does are actually pretty interesting in what if scenarios.
Yeah, I know. A lot of times people will drop out for this reason or that reason. I don't know why they do it. Um, the Irvin Staub interview on evil. That's a very good one, and it's one of the few interviews that you are going to talk with someone who's a Holocaust survivor or a survivor of World War II and a Jew who you don't want to say, "Oh God, stop with the pity me stuff." He's not pity me. He's
No,
able to get outside of his own suffering as a person and as a from a cultural perspective, and it's one of I think it's one of the best interviews about evil and about that references Nazism that you're going to find online because he's not wallowing in his own cultural identity.
what about Greatness Devalued?
That was a good show. But there is that infamous moment. Do you want to say what it was? You saw that?
The infamous moment. You'll have to remind me. I
That
haven't
where we're talking about greatness devalued, and the one younger guy talks about David Foster Wallace,
Ah, yes, right.
and I'm like, and I tried. There was at a point, and I sort of had to say, well, if you like type, you know, shit eating monkeys or one, I think the term you use, and it's like but the thing that's good about it is he put on a silver platter a great instance of someone exemplifying exactly what the show is about without realizing he's doing it.
There's also an interesting aside on how greatness devalues too. Not just greatness devalued in the term of neglect, but also greatness devalued as in the extra layers that great artists come on upon, or great scientists, or anyone in great pursuits, will make the people on on the in the past seem less. So Homer, perhaps he was viewed as a great artist, or perhaps he even was a great artist within the context of his time. But now Homer is barely functional in terms of how he's viewed once modernist poetry came, at least with anyone with any kind of discerning
Yeah.
critical skills.